Okay, so get ready because today we're really diving deep, going straight to the source, like right into Crowley's Magick in Theory and Practice.
You mean that notoriously dense book?
Yeah, not gonna lie, it can be a tough one to, really crack.
Definitely.
But that's what we're here for, right? To help you unearth the good stuff. Like all those practical techniques and honestly, kind of surprising insights that are buried in there.
Right. Think of us as your, like, Crowley decoders,
Exactly. Cutting through all the, I don't know, sensationalism and mystique.
All the noise.
Yeah, all the noise. And we're going to guide you to the core of his system.
Like a map.
And it's interesting. We're starting off with something that seems, well, surprisingly systematic from a guy who's, associated with chaos.
Let me guess.
Meditation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, right. You wouldn't think Crowley would be big on, like, step-by-step processes. But he really breaks down meditation into these very specific stages.
Huh. Yeah.
Like asana, pranayama. He even had thoughts on, like, the best way to sit. Can you believe that?
It is pretty fascinating when you think about it, because he really understood the power of a solid foundation,
Yeah.
right? Like, he wasn't just throwing out these, like, vague, mystical pronouncements.
Right.
He was meticulously mapping out a path.
Yeah, like follow these steps.
And it starts with, like, mastering your physical and mental state.
Totally. And you know what? He gets surprisingly relatable, too.
Oh.
Like, when he's talking about mastering asana, which is basically just posture,
Right.
he compares it to, like, overcoming this internal rebellion, He even compares that rebellious will to, like, the devil tempting a saint.
What?
Have you ever felt that, though? Like, you're trying to meditate and your brain just will not quit.
All the time, yeah.
Crowley gets it. He totally understood that struggle.
Yeah, he understood that common struggle of, like, quieting those mental distractions, which, let's be honest, we all face.
For sure.
And what's interesting is he wasn't all about, like, tough love either.
Right.
He offered some really, really interesting solutions. Like mantras.
Yes. And not just any old sounds, right?
Yeah.
Like, he was really specific about the rhythm, the pronunciation.
Absolutely.
He even dives into, like, the meaning behind the mantra, Aumum Tat Sat Aum.
I've always loved that one.
It's cool, right? And he explains how it's purely spondaic, which, if you're like me, you might need a little refresher on what that even means.
Yeah, basically it refers to the rhythm of the syllables.
Yeah.
Spondaic just means each syllable has, like, equal emphasis.
Ah, okay, so there's a method to it.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And Crowley was really, really into the power of sound, and he saw these mantras as, like, tools.
Tools for
focusing the mind, using those specific vibrations, those specific rhythms.
It's not just about repeating words. It's about the intention, the energy behind it.
Totally.
It reminds me of how some athletes will, like, use specific breathing patterns to, enhance their performance.
Oh, interesting.
It's kind of like hacking the system, but in this case, the system is your own mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just like an athlete needs discipline, right?
Yes.
Needs ethical conduct.
Right.
Crowley believed the same thing applied to those seeking spiritual growth.
Really?
And he actually called these principles yama and niyama.
Okay, so fill us in. What are yama and niyama all about?
So yama is all about your ethical conduct, basically how you interact with the world around you. And niyama is more about self-discipline, your inner world.
So inner and outer. Got it.
And he even compares ethical conduct to, believe it or not, athletics.
Really?
Yeah. He saw it as a way to, like, minimize that mental excitement,
Wow. So it's not just about, like, sitting on a cushion in a cave somewhere. It's about living a life that supports your practice.
Exactly. He believed that the way you live directly impacts your ability to meditate effectively.
That makes sense.
You can't expect to find inner peace if your outer world is in chaos.
Right.
It's all about creating that environment.
Both internal and external.
Yeah, that it allows for that stillness, that clarity.
Okay. So we've got the foundation, right, with asana, pranayama, yama, and niyama. And then Crowley introduces this whole other layer, pratyahara?
Which is all about...
Gaining control of your thoughts.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's getting real now.
That one's a biggie.
It is. But you know what's interesting? He gives this very specific technique in Liber III.
Okay, tell me more.
He talks about, like, analyzing your thoughts, but almost like you're an objective observer, like you're watching them go by.
Interesting.
And Crowley believed that by, like, becoming aware of that constant stream of thoughts, you could begin to kind of, I don't know, master them.
Master them, okay.
It kind of sounds like training a wild animal, doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
All those thoughts are running rampant, and you have to slowly but surely tame them.
Right, right.
No wonder he stressed the importance of discipline.
Oh, absolutely. And he warns that as you delve deeper into pratyahara,
Yeah.
you might experience this kind of jarring feeling, almost like forgetting who you are, what you're doing, almost like temporary amnesia.
Wait, what? So it's like meditating yourself into a temporary blank slate?
Kind of.
That sounds a little freaky, to be honest.
It can be a bit disorienting, but Crowley saw that as a sign of progress.
Really?
It's like momentarily waking up from the dream of, like, everyday consciousness,
Wow.
getting a glimpse behind the curtain of the mind.
He compares it to that feeling you get when you're like half awake and you can't remember what town you're in.
Oh, yeah. Like, wait, where am I? Who am I?
Yes, exactly.
I love that he uses those everyday experiences to make these really esoteric concepts so relatable.
Yeah, it makes it more accessible, you know? But he's clear that these aren't just like interesting mental phenomena.
No.
They're gateways to like deeper states of awareness.
Oh, for sure.
So you're diligently practicing, facing down all those mental distractions, and then, boom, dhyana.
And here's where it gets really, really interesting.
Okay, I'm ready. Tell me everything.
Dhyana is that state of profound meditative absorption, where that sense of a separate self starts to dissolve.
Yes.
Yeah. Imagine the world as you know it kind of fading into the background. You're not thinking, you're not feeling, you just are.
It's like complete stillness.
Yes.
I mean, he describes it as this like radical shift in perception, right?
It is.
And he uses this really vivid image of a candle in a darkened room. And he's like, throw open the shutters and that sunlight makes the flame practically invisible.
I love that.
That's dhyana.
Such a powerful metaphor, right, for how the intensity of that meditative state can, like, eclipse your usual sense of self.
Yeah.
But, you know, Crowley was always a proponent of direct experience.
Oh, yeah. He was all about that.
He emphasized that dhyana isn't just some concept to be memorized. It's a lived reality to be pursued.
He was all about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Speaking of which, where does magic fit into all of this? Because, I mean, we've talked about meditation, but Crowley is kind of notorious for his views on magic, right?
Well, this is where Crowley really, like, flips the script.
Oh.
He wasn't about, like, spells and sorcery and all that stuff you see in the movies. He actually redefined magic as, I'm going to quote him here, the science and art of causing change in conformity with will.
Okay, so less about like pulling rabbits out of hats and more about understanding and like directing your own, I don't know, inner power.
Exactly.
It almost sounds like something we can all tap into, not just a select few with like mystical powers.
Exactly. But he was very clear that this wasn't about bending the world to your whims, you know?
Right.
Like, it's not some kind of superpower.
Right, right.
Crowley believed that true magic was about aligning your will with these deeper currents of the universe. It's about working in harmony with those forces, not against them.
So less about commanding the universe to do your bidding and more about becoming like a channel for something bigger than yourself. Okay, I'm starting to see why he put so much emphasis on meditation as like the foundation.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating the focus and the self-awareness to really understand your true will, not just those like fleeting desires.
Right.
Crowley saw meditation as like essential for developing that willpower, that focus, to even practice magic effectively.
You know, it's interesting. He almost sounds like a scientist sometimes.
Oh, tell me about it.
Analyzing, experimenting, meticulously recording his observations.
Right.
It's a far cry from, like, that image of the, you know, wild-eyed mystic that usually comes to mind when you think about Aleister Crowley.
That's one of the things that makes Crowley so fascinating. He was this really intriguing mix of, like, rigorous intellect and this deep mystical exploration. And speaking of meticulous records, he was a huge advocate for keeping a detailed magical record.
Like a magical diary.
Kind of. To track his progress, identify any obstacles he was facing, and to really ensure that he was being objective.
So, like a scientific journal, but for magic.
Exactly.
Okay. So what kind of things would he be recording in this magical journal?
Oh, man. Everything. The rituals he was performing, the tools he was using, the results he achieved, and even his failures.
So he wasn't afraid to, you know, admit when things didn't go as planned?
No, not at all. Crowley understood that growth often comes from understanding our mistakes.
Right.
He wasn't afraid to experiment, you know, to push boundaries. But he also understood that observation and analysis were key.
So it's like he approached magic with that same rigor that, like, a scientist brings to the lab.
Exactly.
That's actually pretty cool. So we've got the meditation, then the magic. it feels like we're building towards something here. What's like the next layer of the cake?
This is where we get into one of Crowley's most, I think, crucial but often misunderstood concepts.
Okay, hit me with it.
The holy guardian angel.
Okay.
And no, it's not your typical angel sitting on your shoulder, whispering in your ear.
Yeah, I figured with Crowley, nothing's ever typical.
Never.
So what are we talking about here when we say holy guardian angel?
So for Crowley, the holy guardian angel is this incredibly powerful inner guide.
Okay.
It's a source of like profound wisdom and this untapped creative potential.
Okay.
He believed that each of us, everyone listening, has the capacity to connect with this higher self, this wellspring of guidance and inspiration.
That's a pretty empowering concept. Right. But I'm guessing it's not as simple as like deciding, okay, I want to connect, and poof, there it is.
Right.
You know?
Definitely not.
Right.
Crowley was very adamant that this wasn't about like passively waiting for divine inspiration to strike you.
Right.
He believed in actively seeking that connection through practices like self-analysis, dream interpretation, and even astral projection.
Okay, astral projection, now we're getting into some like next level stuff.
Right.
So it sounds like he's talking about really like exploring the hidden depths of your own consciousness.
Exactly. And it's within those depths that Crowley believed we could find our true will.
Not just what we want like on a surface level, but like our deeper purpose.
Exactly. Our unique calling in this life.
This is giving me a lot to think about.
Right.
It's like he's giving you a roadmap.
Okay.
But he's also saying, like, hey, you're driving the car.
Yeah.
You decide where this journey takes you.
And that's a key distinction, right?
Right.
Crowley wasn't about blind faith or dogma. He was challenging you to engage in active self-discovery, urging you to go out and find your own truth.
He really was all about like personal empowerment, which I think is something that really resonates with people today.
Absolutely.
But I'm not going to lie, some of his ideas can be, well, a bit intimidating, especially when you start to get into like all the symbolism that he uses.
Oh, yeah.
Because he uses a lot.
Oh, his work is definitely a tapestry woven from many different threads. He's pulling from ancient Egyptian mythology, the Kabbalah, Eastern mysticism.
It's a lot.
It can seem like a lot to unravel, for sure.
So how are we supposed to like make sense of it all? Do we need like a Crowley dictionary just to understand what the heck he's even talking about?
Crowley believed that symbolism was a language, but not one you could just like look up in a book.
Right.
He saw it as a way to communicate these truths that go beyond words. And he really encouraged his readers to find their own personal interpretations of those symbols.
So it's not about like memorizing a bunch of definitions. It's about letting those symbols like speak to you on a deeper level.
Exactly. Think of it like this. A symbol is like a seed. Crowley provides the seed, but it's up to you to plant it, to nurture it, and to see what grows. He believed that true understanding came from that direct experience, not just from intellectual analysis.
It's like he's saying, here are the tools, now go build something amazing.
Yeah.
But he also seemed to have this healthy respect for like the potential dangers of these practices, especially when, ego gets involved.
Yeah, and that's a really important point to bring up, right? Because Crowley wasn't like oblivious to the potential downsides. He knew that magic could be, well, kind of risky. Especially, like you said, when ego gets out of control.
Exactly. He saw it as a tool, right? Magic can be a tool for growth. But just like any powerful tool, it can be misused.
For sure.
And remember that definition of magic, causing change in conformity with will.
Right.
Well, Crowley believed that our individual wills, they really needed to be in alignment with something much bigger, that ultimate will of the universe.
I see.
And he saw egotism as this major roadblock on that path. Okay, so it's not about imposing your own will on the world. It's about like understanding and aligning yourself with a greater purpose.
Exactly.
Man, it sounds like such a different way of thinking about magic than what we usually hear.
It really is. It's about understanding where you fit in the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
And then working in harmony with those natural laws.
So Crowley wasn't interested in those like cheap tricks or just serving your own selfish desires.
Not at all. He saw magic as this path to self-mastery, not having power over others.
Which kind of brings us back to that whole concept of the master of the temple, which honestly doesn't sound like your average magician title.
Right. Not your typical sorcerer.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So what did it really mean to be like a master of the temple for Crowley?
Well, it wasn't about like lording over others or anything. For Crowley, becoming a master of the temple was all about mastering yourself. He saw it as that, like, culmination of the magical path,
Oh, wow.
reaching this incredible state of, like, perfect balance, perfect integration.
So less about like casting spells and more about just becoming a more well-rounded human.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
Hmm.
He believed that true spiritual development had to encompass all aspects of who you are.
Like your physical body.
Yeah. Your emotional world, your intellect, your spiritual side, everything has to work together.
So he's saying that to understand ourselves, we actually unlock like the secrets of the universe.
Exactly. But that understanding, it requires us to confront those, maybe not so pleasant parts of ourselves, those parts that we might want to keep hidden.
The shadow side.
Exactly. Crowley truly believed that real lasting growth could only come from acknowledging and embracing everything.
The good, the bad, the light, and the dark. It's all part of it.
Exactly. He wasn't about sugarcoating the human experience.
Not at all. With all this talk about self-exploration, confronting your shadow self, I mean, did Crowley believe that everyone could achieve this master of the temple state? Or was it only for a select few?
Yeah, that's a question a lot of people have. And honestly, Crowley himself could be a bit cryptic at times.
For sure.
But I do think he genuinely believed in the potential of every single person. He saw Magick as a path to self-discovery, a way to tap into that inner power that he believed resides within all of us.
It's not about being born with it, it's about cultivating it, right?
Yes.
It's a very, democratic view of magic when you really think about it.
It really is. He provided the tools, he provided the framework.
Yeah.
But he was adamant that it was up to each individual to actually put in the work, to walk their own unique path. He often used that phrase,
Which one?
"Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will."
I was hoping we'd get to that. That's probably one of his most well-known sayings, but it's so often misunderstood. So let's break it down. What did he really mean by do what thou wilt?
Right. It wasn't about just following every impulse or whim.
Okay.
For Crowley, will, with a capital W, meant something so much deeper.
Okay.
It was about aligning your actions with your true will, that unique purpose that you were born to fulfill.
That's powerful.
And he believed that real love,
Mm-hmm.
true love, could only exist when it was in alignment with that will.
So really, it's about self-discovery more than anything, isn't it? Figuring out who you really are and what you're meant to be doing here.
Absolutely. And honestly, that's the beauty of Crowley's work. Yeah, it's challenging, it's complex, it can even be a little outrageous at times, we can't deny that.
Totally.
But beneath it all, there's this incredible depth, this profound respect for what it means to be human. He truly believed in our capacity for greatness.
If we're willing to put in the work.
Right, exactly. If we're willing to do what it takes to achieve it. And, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We really have.
But we've only just scratched the surface of Crowley's work.
Just dipped our toes in, really.
Yeah.
So where should we go from here? Where can our listeners go to kind of keep exploring this on their own?
I would say the best approach with Crowley is to just dive right into his work.
Just go for it.
But with an open mind. A healthy dose of, skepticism never hurts either.
Yeah, question everything.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to disagree with him, to come up with your own interpretations of his ideas.
You'd want it that way.
He would. He was all about challenging the status quo, both in the world and within ourselves. And as you're exploring his work, keep in mind what we talked about today. Self-awareness, the power of your own will, and that idea that true magic, it's not about control, it's about alignment. It's about aligning yourself with something so much greater than yourself.
It's been a wild ride, this deep dive, but at the end of the day, it really is a journey that we all have to take for ourselves.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So, to everyone listening, go out there, experiment, explore, see what you discover, and always remember what Crowley said. The method of science is the method of magic.
What a quote to end on. That's it for our deep dive into the world of Aleister Crowley. We hope you'll keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep unlocking those hidden depths within yourselves. Until next time.